We decided to rinse off at the beach showers before heading home. It was supposed to be quick, just to get the sand off our skin, but something happened then that I still can't explain. When we reached the showers, Nathan stepped under first, letting the water run down his back. I stood off to the side, watching him for a moment before I stepped in too. I don't know what came over me, but I peeled off my outer clothing and stood beside him, the water cool against my skin. Nathan looked at me, startled. I don't know if it was surprise, confusion, or something else entirely, but he didn't say a word. I glanced at him, then really looked at him, and said, "You should take off your shorts too. You need to rinse properly." I don't know why I said it. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I could be in control, that I could make this stop. Or maybe I was testing him, testing myself. He hesitated for a second, then did as I said, sliding his shorts off. And there we were, together, alone, the water pouring down on us, washing everything away except what we were both feeling. I turned my back to him and asked softly, "Help me with my back." And he did. His hands were careful again, just like before, but there was no mistaking the tension. I felt it in him. I felt it in me. When he touched my waist, I froze. The air seemed to thicken around us, the sound of the water drowning out everything else. I could have walked away. I could have stopped it. But instead, I leaned back, closer to him. I reached for his hands and guided them to my chest, and when I did, he didn't pull away. What happened next I can't explain. I won't explain. It was a moment, a blur of need, loneliness, and something else I don't want to name. It wasn't soft, and it wasn't slow. It was desperate, passionate, wrong in every way, but I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to. And when it was over, we just stood there, the water still pouring down on us, washing away the evidence but not the truth. He held me then, held me like no one else had in years, and I let him. Afterward, we didn't speak. We dried off, packed up, and walked back to the car in silence. I watched Nathan from the corner of my eye, his face flushed, his movements stiff. I knew I'd ruined everything. I knew we'd crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt alive. The ride home was silent at first. The car felt too small, too heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on us. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to focus on the road, but my mind was spinning. I could still feel Nathan, his hands, his body, the weight of everything we'd just done. I kept stealing glances at him in the passenger seat. He sat stiffly, staring out the window, his face flushed, his jaw tight. And then, out of nowhere, he spoke. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost unsure. I didn't look at him. I couldn't, but I heard him. What just happened back there? My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I thought about pretending I didn't hear him, about brushing it off, changing the subject. But there was no point in pretending anymore, not after what we'd done. I took a shaky breath and answered, "I don't know." It was the truth, or at least the closest thing to it. I didn't know what had happened or why. All I knew was that everything had changed. We didn't talk again until we pulled into the driveway. I turned off the car, but neither of us moved. Nathan finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that scared me. It wasn't confusion or guilt or even shame. It was longing. "How long have you felt like this?" he asked. His words sent chills through me because I'd been asking myself the same question. I looked at him then, and it was like a dam broke inside me. "I don't know," I whispered. Maybe longer than I want to admit." We were both quiet after that, just sitting there in the dark. I thought that would be it, that we'd go inside, try to forget it all, and pretend nothing had happened. But Nathan had other ideas. Before I could open the door, he leaned over and kissed me. It was soft at first, hesitant, like he was afraid I'd pull away. But I didn't. I let him kiss me, and I kissed him back. And then I lost control. I don't know if it was the loneliness, the years of neglect, or the way Nathan looked at me like no one had in so long, but I let it happen right there, outside our house. Nathan pulled me into him, his hands sliding over me like they belonged there. I felt alive. I felt wanted. I felt seen for the first time in years. I didn't care about anything else. I don't know how long we stayed like that, tangled up in each other, but eventually we moved inside. I don't remember much about the walk to the door, just the feeling of his hand on mine, the quiet between us buzzing like electricity. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Once we were inside, everything escalated, like we'd been holding back for too long and the dam had finally burst. The next few days were a blur. Nathan stayed close to me, always finding reasons to brush against me or look at me when no one else was watching. I'd tell myself to stop, to pull away, to end whatever this was, but every time I looked at him, I saw the same loneliness I felt. It was like we were mirrors of each other, reflecting back the same need, the same emptiness. And I couldn't say no. I didn't want to. At night, I'd lie in bed next to Daniel, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of his breathing. I'd think about Nathan in the next room, about the way his hands felt, the way he made me feel alive again. And then I'd close my eyes, guilt curling up in my chest like a snake. I knew it couldn't last. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. The tension between us grew stronger every day until it finally exploded. It was late one evening. Daniel was at work again, Lily was asleep, and Nathan and I were in the kitchen. I was washing dishes, trying to keep my mind off everything, when I felt him behind me. I turned around, and there he was, looking at me the same way he had on the beach. "Nathan," I said softly, trying to warn him, but he didn't stop. He stepped closer, so close I could feel his breath on my neck. "Mom," he whispered, "I can't stop thinking about you." I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I wanted to tell him to stop, to go back to his room, to leave me alone, but I didn't. Instead, I looked up at him and said the one thing I shouldn't have: I can't stop either. And that was it. That was the moment everything fell apart. Nathan kissed me again, harder this time, desperate, and I kissed him back. I didn't care that it was wrong. I didn't care about Daniel or Lily or the life we'd built. All I cared about was him, Nathan, my son, the only person who made me feel like I mattered. Since that day on the beach, things haven't gone back to normal. In fact, I'm not sure they ever will. Nathan and I crossed a line, one that can't be erased, no matter how hard I try to convince myself otherwise. What started as a moment has turned into something I can't control. The guilt is there, heavy, constant, but it doesn't stop me, and that's the part that scares me the most. I look at my husband, Daniel, and my daughter, Lily, every day, and I wonder how they don't see it, how they don't notice the cracks that are spreading through our family. Maybe they're too caught up in their own lives to see me slipping. Or maybe I've just gotten better at hiding it. But deep down, I know this can't last forever. Secrets have a way of coming out, and when they do, the fallout will destroy everything. A painful truth and a new path. I tried to stop. I told myself over and over again that this was wrong, that Nathan deserved better, that I deserved better. But every time he touched me, every time he looked at me like I was the only person in the world, I lost myself. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. And that's the truth I had to live with. But I couldn't keep living that way. One night, after another moment with Nathan, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty table. The guilt was too heavy to bear. I knew I had to end it, not just for me, but for Nathan, for Lily, for the family we still had. The next morning, I sat Nathan down in the living room. My hands were shaking as I spoke. "Nathan, we can't do this anymore," I said, my voice trembling. "It's wrong. It's hurting us, and it's going to hurt everyone else if it continues." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of longing and pain. "I know," he whispered, "but I don't know how to stop feeling this way." "We have to," I said, tears streaming down my face. "You're my son. I love you, but not like this. We need help, both of us." I decided to tell Daniel the truth. That evening, when he came home from work, I sat him down and confessed everything. I told him about the beach, the moments with Nathan, the line we'd crossed. Daniel was silent at first, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. Then he stood up, his voice shaking with anger and hurt. "How could you do this, Grace?" he shouted. "He's our son." "I know," I sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I was lonely and I let it go too far. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try." Daniel left the house that night, saying he needed space. I didn't blame him. The next day, I found a therapist for Nathan and myself. We started going to separate sessions, working through the guilt, the loneliness, and the boundaries we'd broken. It was painful, but necessary. Nathan eventually moved out to live with his aunt for a while, giving us both the space we needed to heal. Daniel and I tried to salvage our marriage, but the trust was gone. After months of trying, we decided to separate. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it was the right one. Lily stayed with me, and I made sure she knew she was loved, even as our family changed. I also started focusing on myself. I joined a support group for women dealing with loneliness and began painting again, something I hadn't done since I was young. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again, not the woman who had been invisible for so long, but someone new, someone stronger. Nathan and I still talk, but our relationship is different now. We're working on rebuilding the trust we lost, as mother and son, not as anything else. The scars of that time will always be there, but I've learned that the biggest betrayals aren't the ones we commit against others, they're the ones we commit against ourselves. I let loneliness push me to a place I never thought I'd go, but I'm finding my way back, one step at a time.